Excellent, thank you. Welcome back everybody to this session on mobilising Tanzania's natural resources. You saw me earlier, my name's Philip Walker, Senior Editor with the Economist Intelligence Unit, and I'll be chairing this session. I think it's a very topical section, obviously with global trends and demand for commodities surging to pre-economic crisis levels, and Tanzania's potential, as well as what it's currently producing as well. It's not just a gold or a gas story. Tanzania's natural resource base is impressively varied, and we're going to be talking today to some people with experience in the sector. We'll get the government perspective as well. We'll look at the current legislation as it stands, potential developments in that area, and then just get a good debate going on the future of and the utilisation of Tanzania's natural resources. So I'm joined today by the Deputy Energy and Mines Minister, Mr. Adam Molina. We also have Mr. Mark Parker, who's the CEO of African Eagle. Next to him, we have Stephen Kisandu, the Senior Business Analyst for the Bank of New York Mellon. Then we have Christopher Ford, Managing Director of Songas, and Louis Coetzi, the Chief Operating Officer and Director of the Missouri Group. Thank you very much. If we can, I'd like to start by inviting the Honourable Deputy Minister to maybe speak for a few minutes on his role and how he sees Tanzania's natural resources being developed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me apologize. I came in a bit late. As you can see, I'm sweating. I had to do some running, which is not such a good idea to do in a suit. 3 o'clock in Dar es Salaam weather. And unfortunately, I got caught up in the Parliamentary Energy Committee, and that also is not a good place to be at this time of the day. So, especially with the circumstances of the power. But first of all, I want to thank the organizers of this event for including the Energy and Minerals Department among your speakers today. And it is indeed a privilege to be here with you and to be able to share with you our views on the matters related to our sector. Tanzania is currently facing a challenge of progressively growing demand of energy. I'm going to divide my talk between energy and minerals, and I'll try to be as precise as possible without confusing details from my speech, which I've just finished about 10 minutes ago in the Parliamentary Committee. The most immediate challenge we face today is finding the energy projects to enable us to meet a growth of 12 to 15% annually. The development in the energy sector is part of our 2025 development vision, and the mission is to create conditions for provision of safe, reliable, efficient, cost-effective, and environmentally friendly, appropriate energy to all on a sustainable basis. This is in accordance with the country's power system master plan, and the electricity demand is earmarked to grow at a rate of about 12% for the short period, and thereafter at the rate of about 10%. The short period meaning from about 2011 to 2015. We have problems with our power sector, and they come from a variety of reasons, but most of all, I would say, maybe prolonged underinvestment in the electricity infrastructure and over-reliance on the hydro system. So at the moment we are experiencing power shortages at times during the peak period of about 300 megawatts, which of course results now into the forced power rationing for businesses, industries, and commercial enterprises. We've brought in an energy policy of 2009, which is recognizing of the role of the private sector in the development of our energy sector. The energy sector in Tanzania requires diversified investment. Whereas Tanzania is rich in hydropower, solar, natural gas, geothermal, uranium, and biomass energy sources, and therefore substantial possibility exists for accelerating electrification to meet the growing demand, especially in the rural areas, through off-grid electrification. As you will know as well, that Tanzania has a low level of population access, which has access to electricity. I think that would be about 13 to 14%. The government is further determined to support the strategic power sector development covering the short term of 2011 to 2015, which is part, of course, of the long-term least cost expansion plan of the power sector master plan, which goes all the way to 2033. Key stakeholders associated with the implementation of the strategic short-term generation plan: Ministry of Energy and Minerals, Ministry of Finance, TANESCO, TPDC, the Tanzania Petroleum Development Corporation, SONGAS, Pan-African Energy, EWURA, the regulator, PPRA, Public Procurement Regulator, and other development partners. We all want to involve them to ensure a wall-to-wall buy-in and timely implementation of the power sector master plan according to the schedule. The short-term expansion generation plan is driven by a planning and policy objective of reducing overdependence on hydro electricity by diversifying the generation resource base. We've still got some hydro elements that are willing to come into the system, Rumakali, Ruhuji, Mpanga, which the three of them total would be about 800 megawatts, which would just be about almost the demand we have right now out of the three. But as you know, hydro projects are slow in coming into commissioning, and they would take about 4 to 5 years. So we are looking at other sources, including the hydro as well, because of course we are looking towards a demand of about maybe 2,000 to 3,000 megawatts in the next 6 to 7 years. Also, investments are required in areas of petroleum exploration on open acreages currently available. Although no liquid hydrocarbons have been found, 4 gas fields have been discovered in Tanzania. The petroleum exploration is going on, and at the moment there are 11 companies engaged in related activities in the inland basins, offshore and onshore. And we still have open acreages for investments in the petroleum exploration, petroleum, oil and gas exploration. Tanzania Petroleum Development Corporation is the public organization responsible for promoting exploration activities on oil and natural gas in the country. The proven natural gas reserves are estimated at 664 billion cubic meters, and the deposits are found in Songo-Songo, Lindi region, and in Mnazi Bay in Mtwara. The gas from Songo-Songo is transported to Dar es Salaam through a pipeline of around 232 kilometers, and the gas utilization has grown to an extent that now we are looking to increase the gas availability in Dar es Salaam by putting another pipeline along the same route from Songo-Songo, but also connecting from Mtwara, which is further south of Tanzania. Following the successful implementation of the Songo-Songo gas project, the government has commenced plans to install an additional pipeline, as I mentioned, with sufficient capacity to transport gas from the source to Dar es Salaam. A feasibility study for gas distribution in Dar es Salaam has already been carried out, and now a developer of the project is required to implement the distribution infrastructure. In spite of the government positive outlook towards development of gas utilization in Tanzania, these projects require substantial financial resources, and therefore private sector participation, private sector engagement is key. The government invites private sector participation in the form of PPPs or otherwise to build commercially viable and sustainable energy projects where all stakeholders, private producers, government, and consumers benefit considerably. To support this broad objective, the government has created a conducive environment to attract investment in the energy sector. These include policy, legal, regulatory, and institutional frameworks which are transparent, and supportive of private sector participation in the development of the energy sector. Ladies and gentlemen, specific energy policies have been developed to address the constraints in achieving reliable energy to meet the projected growing demand. An industry regulator, the Energy and Water Utilities, became operational in 2006 to undertake oversight functions and promote private sector investment. Enactment of the Rural Energy Act, enabling the Rural Energy Agency and Rural Energy Fund to become operational in 2007, with the responsibility for promoting the access expansion to energy in people living in semi-urban and rural areas. You would remember the intervention of His Excellency Prime Minister Pinda in the morning, where he specifically referred to the urgency to promote and address issues of agriculture and the rural population in Tanzania, especially because we have 75% of the 42 million Tanzanians living in the rural sector. So we can't have them without energy sources, because we have to address that if we are going to address the development issue and the poverty eradication issue as a must. A new Electricity Act was enacted in 2008 to guide all players in the industry and the entry of private sector in particular. As I mentioned, the new Power System Master Plan of 2009, and the preparation of a power sector reform strategy to assist the government to restructure the country's electricity supply industry. Let me take this opportunity to invite the business community to view the provision of energy services not only as the preserve of the public sector, but to embrace the energy sector as a viable area of investment, just as they do in all other sectors. Energy markets domestically and externally, such as the East African Power Pool and the South African Power Pool, are incentives to invest. The government of Tanzania is willing to listen to the concerns of the business community. I believe that this roundtable discussion will provide a good forum for engaging both sides. This discussion is expected to offer valuable information on how the private sector can develop viable energy projects that are both profitable for them and also contribute to much needed energy supply and reliability for other business operations, social and domestic activities. I try to be as brief as possible regarding the energy. Now I want to, well, that's what politicians always say. Now I want to address the few issues I wanted to talk about regarding the mineral sector, which is also key to Tanzanian development objectives. Tanzania has an attractive geological environment known to host various minerals that range from metals such as gold, iron, nickel, gemstones, emerald, phosphate, industrial minerals such as phosphate, lime, gypsum, and building materials such as stone aggregates, and energy minerals such as coal and uranium. Geological investigation started in the late 19th century. Since then, mineral exploration has been carried out by the government, institutions, and companies from within and outside of Tanzania. Mining in Tanzania at large and small scales have been going on, with gold and diamond being the major minerals produced in Tanzania at different times of our history, of our mining history. The potential minerals right now include uranium in central and southern parts of Tanzania, as well as nickel in the northwestern part of the country. In addition to the favorable geological environment and mineral endowment, Tanzania has competitive advantages such as considerable unexploited mineral potentials, accessible geological data. We have the Geological Survey, which was established in 1935. It's been accumulating data ever since. Of course, data that was accumulated in 1935 is a bit shaky right now, but with the new techniques, with computerization and etc., we've been able to use the same data and to elaborate on the geological features, which have brought out quite interesting scenarios of late. In the mid-1990s, the government of Tanzania made major economic reforms, focusing on promotion of socio-economic development. And that is when, as again, as the Prime Minister mentioned in the morning, we were coming down from a historical background of the economy being managed through nationalization, and then we went to privatization. And this was the year where we started privatizing all these institutions, which included the State Mining Company, and also which called for a review of the Mineral Policy and the Mineral Act in 1997 and 98, respectively. The implementation of the policy and the Act brought a notable growth and several developments of this sector, which included commissioning of six large-scale gold mines, which increased the gold production from less than 1 ton per annum in 1998 to over 45 tons per annum in the year 2010. This growth has made the sector, the mineral sector, to be the second, very tight second, after tourism in terms of foreign currency earnings.
Deputy Minister, I think this would be an excellent point to invite our other panellists to talk about what you've been saying so far, because we've got a lot to cover. And so far, I think we've got a government determined to ramp up its energy production and inviting the private sector to play a key role in that, and at the same time acknowledging the tremendous underexploited natural resources that Tanzania has. And I know we've got some experts in both of those areas. So if I could just invite our panellists to talk for a few minutes about what the Honourable Deputy Minister has said so far and their feelings on operating in Tanzania at the moment. If we start with you, Mark.
Thank you. Just by way of introduction, African Eagle is currently developing one of the nickel deposits about 100 kilometres east of Mwanza on the shores of Lake Victoria. I was very interested this morning when the Prime Minister said that he saw a role for the private sector in the economy. I'd probably go a bit further than that and say that the private sector is the economy, particularly if you include the full spectrum of from African barrack gold right through to a street vendor or a small farmer who's selling her surplus in the market. By this definition, the private sector pays through taxes for and contracts the government to provide certain social goods, like a healthy and well-educated population, security and the rule of law, and an enabling environment for conducting commerce and trade. Now, economists tell us that free enterprise is a mechanism for efficiently directing scarce resources. I think governments, of course, have to remember this. As Churchill said, in slightly different circumstances, of democracy, it's the worst possible system except for all the others. Perhaps it's cheeky of me, I'm a geologist, to offer my comments on economics at a forum which is hosted by the Economist magazine, but I do think it's worth making these observations. Okay, so with that behind us, let me just turn briefly to a few specifics on the mining industry. As the Honourable Minister said, Tanzania mining has been very successful in Tanzania in the last 10 or 20 years. Although Tanzania probably has a roughly average mineral endowment for its size, and it doesn't enjoy any of the major mineral provinces like the African Copperbelt or the Witwatersrand goldfields, its great advantage is that it's still very much underexplored. And the 1998 mining law made exploration and development of mines and new deposits relatively attractive for inward investment. African Eagle has also been very impressed by the workforce in Tanzania, the willingness to learn and to take responsibility. We operate with relatively few expats in the country, and those are generally short-term specialists. And we've made all our Tanzanian staff members of our incentive share option scheme. Okay, what's the impediments, perhaps? I suppose the biggest one is uncertainty, and here there are two items that I'd like to mention. The first is the new mining law, the 2009 mining law, which has yet to be fully implemented, and there are certain clauses which are causing a good deal of uncertainty. I know there's been a good dialogue between the Ministry, and particularly the Commissioner for Mineral Resources, and the Chamber of Mines on this, but there's still a little way to go to reassure the industry about that law. The other cause of uncertainty is simply that local authorities interpret central regulations in very different ways. The TRA is famous for this in Mwanza. It seems to follow its own path and doesn't always follow the instructions from the centre. Another major issue is capacity, and here I'm referring mainly to the issuance and maintenance of mineral titles. Over the last few years, the issuance of mineral titles has fallen behind by more than 2 years. This may not sound like a problem. We still get on with the work, but if you're conducting legal due diligence in order to raise cash for a development, you have to be able to show that you have valid legal title to a property. And if you can't show that because the right piece of paper isn't in place, it really does restrict your ability to raise capital. The third constraint, of course, is infrastructure, which was well rehearsed earlier on. The nickel mine that we're proposing to build, unlike a gold mine, requires quite a lot of material to be transported, around 500,000 tons of reagents and product per year needs to be shifted around. And that's really quite a major element in our calculations. Out of the $3.40 per pound to produce nickel, which we estimate it's going to cost us, $1 of that is in transport costs. Then I suppose the final point is on decision making and implementation. It often appears that there's a lot of goodwill and good intentions in Tanzania, but they're not always followed through to action. The railways, perhaps, is an example of this. I don't know if anybody here can suggest a way that implementation can be improved, and that decision making can have some lead put in its pencil. Okay, that's what I have to say.
Excellent. Please, Stephen, thank you.
Yeah.